Welcome to the Kitsap Publishing Deep Dive podcast with myself, Jack Bennett, and Emily Waters. Join us as we explore books, current events, history, politics, health, and more. Let's dive in.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we are going to be looking at Seashell Ship,
Okay.
which is a collection of poetry and prose by D.T. Baldwin.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, and it's kind of a fascinating story, too, because D.T. Baldwin, well, he was a Vietnam War veteran.
Wow.
He spent 40 years in the corporate world, and then he becomes a poet.
That's quite the career trajectory.
Yeah, it is. And the poetry's really interesting, but there's also a really interesting personal story that kind of runs through all of it that I think you'd be fascinated by.
Well, I'm intrigued already. Let's learn more about this guy.
So, yeah, D.T. Baldwin, Vietnam War veteran, 40 years in the corporate world, and then decides to become a poet.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because on the surface, those seem like very different worlds. The military, this very structured environment, and then the corporate world, which is, results-oriented.
Yeah.
And then you've got poetry, which is often seen as this very emotional, expressive art form. But I think what's fascinating about Baldwin's work is that he actually brings all of those experiences together in a really unique way.
Okay, so how does he do that?
Well, he talks about his approach to writing as having an Irish point of view.
Irish point of view? What's that?
Basically, he says it's looking at the world through the bottom of the glass.
Okay, I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's this idea of acknowledging the darkness, the difficulties of life, but also finding the strength and resilience to keep going.
Okay, I see. So you can see how his military background and his corporate experience might have shaped that perspective.
Absolutely. I think those experiences probably gave him a very pragmatic view of the world, but also a deep appreciation for the things that really matter, like family connection and the human spirit.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And you can really see that Irish point of view come through in his poetry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for example, there's a poem in the collection called God Size, where he's talking about faith and loss.
Heavy stuff.
It is. And there's this one line that really captures that whole idea of resilience. It says, "Fear not those who manifest to deprive a body of life. They can only take the flesh. They do not command the soul."
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, it's this recognition that even in the face of death, there's something within us that endures.
So that's kind of like the core of that whole Irish point of view idea?
Exactly. It's about recognizing the darkness, but not letting it consume you.
Okay, so we've got this intriguing author with this unique perspective, but then there's the title of the book itself, Seashell Ship. Where does that come from?
Yeah, so that's not just a random phrase he came up with.
Okay, good.
There's a whole backstory there that's really fascinating. And it actually ties in with a lot of the themes we see in his poetry.
Oh, really? So what is it?
So picture this. You've got a young D.T. Baldwin stationed in Olongapo City in the Philippines during his Navy service.
Okay.
And he comes across this delicate little ship.
A ship.
Yeah, but it's not just any ship. It's made entirely out of seashells.
Wow.
I know, right? So he buys it as a souvenir for his grandmother? Well, that's sweet.
Yeah, it seems like a simple gesture,
Right?
but it actually ends up having a much deeper meaning.
Oh, I bet it does.
So this seashell ship, it becomes this recurring symbol throughout the book.
Okay.
It represents resilience, the power of memory, and the enduring strength of family ties.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
And what's really amazing is that this fragile little object, it survived decades and multiple moves.
It's still intact.
It is.
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible when you think about how delicate seashells are.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But there's even more to this story than that. You mentioned something about a connection to his family history.
Right, so remember where Baldwin bought the ship, the Philippines?
Yes.
Well, it turns out that his uncle Francis, who was killed in action during World War II, is buried in a military cemetery in the Philippines.
Wow, what a coincidence.
I know, right? It's almost too perfect.
Yeah, and it's even more than that.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
So Baldwin himself, he didn't even realize this connection at first.
Yeah, it wasn't until years later when he was organizing his home office that he put the seashell ship next to photos of his father and Uncle Francis.
And that's when it hit him.
Exactly. It was like a light bulb moment.
Wow. So this seemingly random souvenir becomes this tangible link to his family's past, to his uncle's sacrifice.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah.
And that realization, it becomes this driving force behind the book. It's like the seashell ship itself became a vessel for his memories, for all of these complex emotions and experiences that he explores in his writing.
So it's more than just a book of poetry. It's like a journey through his life and his family's history.
Exactly. And it's all anchored by this simple yet powerful object, the seashell ship.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful story.
So we've got this incredible backstory, this almost mystical connection between the seashell ship and Baldwin's family history. The object itself inspired him to delve into these deeper themes of memory loss and resilience.
And that's where the poetry comes in. Seashell Ship. The book is a collection of poems and prose that explores these very themes, reflecting on a wide range of human experiences.
Right, he doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. Love loss, loneliness, even the struggles of modern life. It's all there.
Yeah.
But through it all, there's this thread of hope, this resilience that keeps pulling you back in.
It's that Irish point of view. Again, seeing the world through the bottom of the glass, acknowledging the darkness, but always searching for the light.
Okay, so let's dive into some of these poems. I'm particularly drawn to Camelot Lost. There's a certain melancholy to it, this sense of longing for simpler times. What's your take on it?
In Camelot Lost, Baldwin seems to be grappling with societal changes and a sense of disillusionment with the modern world. There's a line that really struck me. Where is the honor, the chivalry, the simple act of kindness? It speaks to this longing for a bygone era where those values felt more present, more tangible.
It's like he's mourning the loss of innocence, not just on a personal level, but on a societal level. And it makes you wonder, in our pursuit of progress, have we lost sight of some of the things that truly matter?
It's a question that resonates deeply, especially in today's world where technology often dominates our lives. Have we sacrificed genuine human connection for the convenience of virtual interaction? It's a theme that Baldwin explores in another poem, A Manifest Soul.
Oh, tell me about that one. I love the title.
A Manifest Soul focuses on those fleeting moments of connection we experience with strangers. It captures the feeling of being seen and understood, even for a brief instant, by someone you may never encounter again. It's a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, human connection can spark and leave a lasting impact.
It's like those chance encounters remind us that we're all part of something bigger, something interconnected. And it makes you appreciate those little moments of shared humanity.
Absolutely. And it ties back to the core themes of the book, the search for meaning, the longing for connection, and the resilience of the human spirit.
So we've got these grand themes of societal change and human connection. But Baldwin also gets very personal, reflecting on his own family history and the complexities of relationships.
Yes, A Letter to Mom is a particularly poignant example of this. The poem is inspired by a letter Baldwin's father found after World War II, a letter that offers a glimpse into his mother's life and the challenges she faced. It's a beautiful tribute to the strength and resilience of women, particularly those who lived through times of war and uncertainty.
There's a real tenderness in that poem, a sense of deep respect and admiration for his mother. It's like he's trying to understand her story, to connect with her across time and circumstance.
And that desire to connect to understand is something that permeates much of Baldwin's work. Even in poems that deal with more difficult emotions like loneliness or fear, there's this underlying hope for connection.
Right, like in Alone,
Yeah.
which tackles that universal feeling of isolation that I think we've all experienced at some point. But even in that poem, there's a sense that he's not giving up on connection, that he's still searching for it.
Exactly. And that's what makes Seashell Ship so compelling. It's honest and vulnerable, exploring both the light and the dark side of human experience. But through it all, there's this enduring belief in the power of connection, the resilience of the human spirit, and the beauty that can be found even in the midst of hardship.
It's like he's saying, life is messy, it's complicated, but we're all in this together. And somehow that message, especially coming from a guy who's seen his fair share of hardship, is incredibly comforting.
Yeah, I think that's what resonates with people about Baldwin's work. He's not afraid to be vulnerable to share his own struggles, but he also offers this sense of hope, this belief that even in the darkest of times we can find connection and meaning.
That's a powerful message for sure.
It is, and it's one that I think we all need to hear sometimes, especially in today's world where it's easy to feel isolated and disconnected.
So what do we make of this whole seashell ship phenomenon?
I think it's a testament to the power of storytelling and the enduring strength of the human spirit. It's a reminder that even the smallest, most fragile objects can hold deep meaning and connect us to something larger than ourselves.
And it's a reminder that our own personal journeys, no matter how ordinary they may seem, are filled with stories waiting to be told.
Absolutely. Everyone has a seashell ship waiting to be discovered.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I hope our listeners will be inspired to go out and find theirs.
Me too.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the stories that shape our world. It's like the ship itself is a metaphor for the journey Baldwin takes us on through his writing. It's weathered storms, traveled across continents, and yet it remains intact, a testament to the enduring power of those things that truly matter. Family connection, the stories that shape our lives.
And speaking of stories, there's a poem in the collection, a simple poem, that seems to tackle some pretty big questions about good versus evil and the duality of human nature. It's a bit heavier than some of the others, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, a simple poem. What'd you think?
Well, it really showcases Baldwin's depth as a thinker. You know, he doesn't shy away from the complexity of human nature. He acknowledges the darkness, the potential for evil that exists within each of us. But he also highlights the capacity for good, the innate desire to connect, to love, to create something meaningful out of our lives.
It's like he's saying we're all a mix of light and shadow, and that's okay. It's what we choose to do with that duality that defines us.
Exactly. And I think that's a really powerful message, especially in a world that often tries to simplify things into black and white categories. Baldwin's poetry reminds us that life is nuanced, it's messy, and there's beauty to be found in that complexity.
It makes you think about how we judge ourselves and others. Are we too quick to label people as good or bad without considering the full spectrum of their experiences and choices?
Absolutely. It speaks to the importance of empathy, of trying to understand the world through different lenses. Baldwin's poetry encourages us to look beyond the surface, to consider the stories behind the stories, and to recognize the shared humanity that connects us all.
And that theme of connection comes up again and again in his work, even in poems that deal with difficult emotions like loneliness. There's this underlying yearning for unity, for understanding.
It's almost as if he's saying, yes, we're all individuals with our own unique experiences, but at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We need each other.
And that message is so powerful, especially in a world that can feel increasingly divided. It's a reminder to seek out those connections, to bridge the gaps between us, and to remember that we're stronger together than we are apart.
And Seashell Ship, both the object and the book, serves as a powerful symbol of that interconnectedness. The ship itself is a reminder of the ties that bind us to our past, to our families, to the stories that have shaped who we are. And the poetry encourages us to explore those connections, to find meaning in our own personal narratives, and to recognize the shared humanity that binds us all.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Seashell Ship, I'm left with this sense of hope, this belief that even in the midst of life's complexities and challenges, there's beauty to be found, connections to be made, and stories to be told.
Beautifully put. And I hope that listeners will be inspired to explore their own seashell ships, those objects, memories, and experiences that hold a deeper meaning and tell the story of their own unique journey.
It's a journey worth taking. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the stories that shape our world. You know, it's fascinating how Baldwin weaves these personal and societal threads together, creating this tapestry of human experience that's both intimate and universal. And it all circles back to that seashell ship, this seemingly insignificant object that becomes a powerful symbol of memory resilience and the enduring strength of family ties.
It's like the ship itself is a metaphor for the journey Baldwin takes us on through his writing. It's weathered storms, traveled across continents, and yet it remains intact, a testament to the enduring power of those things that truly matter, family connection and the stories that shape our lives.
And speaking of stories, there's a poem in the collection, a simple poem, that seems to tackle some pretty big questions about good versus evil and the duality of human nature. It's a bit heavier than some of the others, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, a simple poem is a really interesting one. What did you think?
Well, it's one of those poems that really makes you think, you know, it's not just about good versus evil. It's about the fact that those two forces often exist within us at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. And Baldwin doesn't shy away from that complexity. He acknowledges the darkness, the potential for evil that exists within each of us. But he also highlights the capacity for good, the innate desire to connect, to love, to create something meaningful out of our lives.
It's like he's saying we're all a mix of light and shadow, and that's okay.
Mm.
What matters is what we choose to do with that duality.
Right, and I think that's a really important message, especially in a world that often tries to simplify things into black and white categories.
Absolutely. You know, it makes you think about how we judge ourselves and others. Are we too quick to label people as good or bad without considering the full spectrum of their experiences and choices?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Baldwin's poetry really encourages us to look beyond those simple labels, to consider the stories behind the stories, and to recognize the shared humanity that connects us all.
Which brings us back to that theme of connection that we see throughout Seashell Ship. Even in the poems that deal with difficult emotions like loneliness or fear, there's this underlying yearning for unity, for understanding.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, yes, we're all individuals with our own unique experiences, but at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We need each other.
And that's such a powerful message, especially in today's world where it's so easy to feel isolated and disconnected.
It is. It's a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles and that reaching out to others can make all the difference.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Seashell Ship, I'm left with this sense of hope, this belief that even in the midst of life's complexities and challenges, there's beauty to be found, connections to be made, and stories to be told.
I couldn't agree more. And, I hope our listeners will be inspired to explore their own seashell ships, those objects, memories, and experiences that hold a deeper meaning and tell the story of their own unique journey.
It's a journey worth taking. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the stories that shape our world.
Thank you for listening to the Kitsap Publishing Deep Dive Podcast. Emily Waters and I will see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.